Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. The first ever television interview with one of Elon Musk's Doge deputies. He joins us alongside Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on how they're teaming up to try to trim the fat. Plus, Governor Ron DeSantis, Lara Trump, they'll stop by. They'll be here in moments. But first, left out and losing big. That's the focus of tonight's angle. In case you hadn't noticed, Democrats are a little unhappy. The faces and voices tell the tale.
We have people going to the Republican districts and going after these Republicans.
I'm so mad. I'm spitting mad.
If you could speak directly to Elon Musk, what would you say?
And their activist base apparently wants even more anger, and they want even more resistance. The facial anger is not enough. Well, sure, they're angry because their freebies and their boondoggles are coming to an end, but so far, the government cuts, considering the massive size of the overall federal budget, are fairly reasonable and actually pretty small. And let's not forget, Presidents Clinton and Biden, they sounded very dogy in the past, even President Obama.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody.
It sounds like he could work for Doge. A Democrat worried about the deficit and interested in eliminating the federal fat? What happened to their party? Sounded so reasonable. But why are so many acting out then? Their behavior ranges from being just adolescent to criminal, even terrorizing. But what's really triggering them? Well, Politico unwittingly staggers to an answer today, and their playbook feature titled The War on Liberal America. Beyond the economic impact of the agenda, Trump agenda, which will be eventually very positive, is the cultural impact he's having. And this goes right to the beating heart of 40 years of liberalism. While liberals see cultural vandalism, some conservatives, Politico writes, see a long overdue correction. It's clear that many of Trump's changes are going to be permanent. No serious Democratic candidate for 2028 will come in pledging to reverse every cut. The world has changed, they write, before our eyes since January 20th. You bet it has. Trump back in the White House means sweeping reform and, in some cases, the annihilation of the left's sacred cows. From DEI to the U.S. Department of Education, lavish foreign aid, trans athletes and women's sports, even the performing arts at the Kennedy Center, where I'm now a new board member. Now, Trump knows that while business may be, while the business of America is business, in order to affect lasting change, you also need a dramatic cultural shift to occur. For a while now, we've seen some signs of a spiritual awakening, and it's usually happening on college campuses with the revivals. And that's wonderful, but we have to start so much earlier than that to really make a change. And Republicans, going back to Reagan, they promised to tackle the federal stranglehold on education. But it never happened until Trump.
We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. Absolutely, it's going to work.
Now, since the department was established, we've spent $3 trillion on education. And the results? Well, not good. Poor test performance, less proficiency in reading and math. We've done a huge disservice to our kids. Of course, Democrats prefer it that way. They prefer the status quo because, sadly, most of them don't care if our kids aren't learning. As long as the propaganda machines, their propaganda machines, continue to hum, as long as their educrat supporters are well paid to develop programs that don't educate our kids. Of course, liberals can't really defend the Department of Education's report card. That's really difficult. But they can work themselves into a frenzy for a crowd.
We are here together because an extreme concentration of power and corruption is taking over this country like never before. I want you to look at every level of office around and support brawlers who fight, because those are the ones who can actually win against Republicans.
Yes, that's a 2028 contender, my friends, spouting typical squad nonsense. And speaking of nonsense,
our job is not to destroy public education. It is to significantly improve it.
Nobody wants this. Nobody in America wants the destruction of public education.
Taking a chainsaw to the Department of Education and undermining its mission to educate our next generation would be horrible for our schools, our families, the children.
of course, it's all of it. Everything they said is preposterous.
It's not just the money, it's the control, how those dollars are spent. This isn't just a MAGA idea, guys. This is empowering parents, teachers, that better communication at the local level, driving curriculum at a localized level for the needs of that community.
Think about it. Why is that a threat to the left? Because they want states and school boards and parents and textbook publishers to have as little control over children's education as humanly possible. And it's not just that. They need the gravy train to keep their members fat and happy. Now, if you're like me, you get tired of your kids having to miss school because teachers take what's called a professional development day. Now, why do they take professional development days? Because the Department of Education sends $2 billion a year to the states to fund these sessions. Now, it beats having to teach kids who can't read how to read. But today is a milestone. For decades, the Department of Education belonged lock, stock, and barrel to the left. Well, that's over. With his executive order, President Trump delivered a major blow to the liberal monopoly on the culture. And the few smart Democrats left in the party will watch and learn, as the crazies who make the headlines and get the clicks will just keep spitting into the headwinds. And that's the angle.
Washington's been all talk, no action, and politicians from both sides of the aisle have made promises and never delivered. They told us they'd control the border, never did. Move the embassy to Jerusalem, never did. Abolish the Department of Education, never did.
And I will tell you, it's three agencies of government when I get there that are gone: commerce, education, and the, what's the third one there?
The government shouldn't be in the middle of everything, and we certainly don't need a federal Department of Education.
We propose to dismantle two cabinet departments, energy and education. There's only one way to shrink the size and cost of big government, and that is by eliminating agencies that are not needed and are getting in the way of a solution.
Well, Trump just did it with a stroke of a Sharpie.
I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. I want to just make one little personal statement. Teachers, to me, are among the most important people in this country. And we're going to take care of our teachers. And I don't care if they're in the union or not in the union. That doesn't matter.
'47's tearing down another pillar of liberalism. The Department of Education was started under Jimmy Carter, and it was supposed to make our kids smarter. 4 decades later, it's failed.
Caroline, what do you say to critics of the president's education plan?
Where was their criticism of our nation's failing test scores for the last several decades? The Department of Education was founded in the 1970s, and since then we have spent more than $3 trillion at this federal bureaucracy. What has been the return on that investment for the American taxpayer? Levels that are less than ideal, less than proficient. Our children's test scores are incredibly concerning when it comes to reading rates, literacy rates, math, and science test scores. The numbers prove that.
We're spending $250 billion a year, and as Bush said, is our children learning? We're spending more money than we did in the 70s, but reading scores are lower now than they were in the 70s. A third of America's students can barely read. 8th grade reading just hit its lowest level ever. College kids can't pass simple civics exams. Want proof? Here's Johnny.
Who was the first president of the United States?
First president of the United States? That was...
Where is Ukraine?
Ukraine. Don't make me sound stupid.
It's in the world.
How's Kamala doing?
Kamala? I don't even know who that is. I don't even know who that is.
What happened on the first Thanksgiving?
The first Thanksgiving? The Pilgrims went on a bender. And then they ate turkey.
Kids can't read, write, or do math, but that's not stopping them from graduating. Teachers are just inflating grades to meet standards and passing them anyway. So the schools hit their numbers and keep getting paid. In Connecticut, a student is suing her school district for graduating her with honors, even though she was illiterate. I thought the Wolf of Washington cared about the kids.
When people ask me what are the 3 most important issues facing the Congress, for my whole time in Congress, I've always said the same thing. Our children, our children, our children.
When people ask me what are the 3 most important issues facing the Congress, I always say the same thing. Our children, our children, our children.
I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about the future, America's working families, for the children. It's always about the children.
Nancy Pelosi talks more about January 6th than reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, what have we done to fix this? We've filled public schools with more teachers just to inflate union dues. And the unions send those dues to Democrats. They shut down schools during COVID and said reopening them would be racist.
Today, state legislators released a revised plan in Senate Bill 86 to try to force schools to physically reopen. If you condition funding on the reopening of schools, that money will only go to white and wealthier schools that do not have the transmission rates that low-income Black and brown communities do. This is a recipe for propagating structural racism.
And while the schools were closed, the teachers' unions stayed home and danced.
It's our livelihood versus our lives. Safe. In this moment, be safe.
The unions forced Biden to keep the schools closed, and our children got dumber and more depressed. And now Randy's rewriting history.
COVID was a terrible time for us. And as you know, because I was on your show a lot and other shows, I wanted schools to be reopened as early as April of 2020. The issue was the fear and the issue was the safety issues. But COVID has really hurt in so many ways. But this has been a Republican talking point for a long time.
Well, Republicans have been talking about it because they heard what Randy said.
And if people are in high risk, they shouldn't be in school. They should be doing things remotely. Just because Donald Trump wants to take a risk with people who go to bars or beaches, those of us who have spent our life teaching kids are not going to take a risk with kids or with our members' lives.
Remote and hybrid are really the only 2 ways you can reopen schools safely.
The unions wanted to keep schools closed because they got hundreds of millions of dollars and they didn't have to go to work. What did they do with the money? Well, they bought a few hand sanitizer stations, and the rest of the money disappeared. A lot of it got embezzled. For them, it was about money and power.
NEA, we have to win all the things, all the things, all the things. Our colleagues are depending on us to win all the things. Keep going, NEA. To preserve our democracy, we must win all the things. Delegates, we won't go back. We will keep going forward because we are the NEA. We are the NEA. We are
The teachers' unions got stronger and the parents got shut out. Girls were getting raped in bathrooms by trans boys, and dads were getting arrested at school board meetings for calling it out. The Biden administration actually spied on parents who called out CRT in the classrooms, even though schools were getting caught red-handed.
What does the MAGA crowd or the church say when you start talking about social justice?
You teach it to a group of seniors at West Jordan High, and they don't.
They talk to students about what is diversity, what is microaggressions, especially at the middle school level.
Or even middle school, do they get any social justice?
Yeah, in junior high, yes. We have a very close partnership with Planned Parenthood, and they come speak in our district all the time.
Whenever our team goes out, we don't do an opt-out prior to. They just go out, meet the kids, work with them. We operate like a math department.
Teachers were getting body slammed over Nintendos. The Department of Education didn't protect them either. Now Trump is, whether they like it or not. One girl got her head bashed into concrete and was put in critical condition. Schools looked like fight clubs, and parents had no choice but to leave them in their crumbling schools because the unions and the big education people block charter schools. Meanwhile, D.C. politicians all send their sons and daughters to private schools, while kids in public schools are using old textbooks and technology. And then when they graduate, illiterate, they're told to get a college degree. So they go to some no-name college worth way too much money and get worthless degrees in communications. 4 years later, they're out of college, no job, and in debt. What do? We bail them out. Remember Joel? He finished grad school in '98, decided to become a professional musician. He doesn't make much money and chose to stop paying off his student loans. But thanks to Biden, Joel had his $250,000 of debt wiped. There are plenty of Joels out there, people who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with no job, living with their parents. This isn't what we're paying for. Our education system's broken, and it's been like that for a while. Here's Steve Jobs.
If you ask who are the customers of education, the customers are the parents. Not even the students, but the parents. And the problem that we have in this country is that the customers went away. The customers stopped paying attention to their schools for the most part. Mothers started working, and they didn't have time to spend at PTA meetings and watching their kids' school. Schools became much more institutionalized, and parents spent less and less and less time involved in their kids' education. And what happens when a customer goes away and a monopoly gets control, which is what's happened in our country, is that the service level almost always goes down.
But we begin tonight with Linda McMahon, the 13th and possibly the very last Secretary of Education. That department was formed in 1979. Now, the Department of Education days are now officially numbered, and after President Trump signed a sweeping executive order to dismantle the Department of Education once and for all. Take a look.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. Everybody knows it's right, and the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them, but everybody knows it's right, and we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time. And we're pleased to be joined today by the woman who I chose because she's an extraordinary person, and hopefully she will be our last Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Linda.
All right, cue Trump derangement syndrome and the predictable meltdown from the left in 3, 2, 1, hit it.
They're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry.
No,
I'm
do
really
not apologize.
angry about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to.
Oh, really angry. That was Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Now, she's the leader of one of the largest teachers unions in the country, quivering with rage and despair, all because federal dollars earmarked for education will go directly to the states instead of the Department of Education. Now, keep in mind, I have never seen her express that kind of outrage that the Department of Education has failed, systemically failed to improve test scores since its creation in 1979, despite dramatic and massive increases in funding year after year after year after year, over $3 trillion in systemic failure. In fact, in 2023, U.S. reading and math scores dropped to the lowest level in decades. And look at this chart. SAT scores also plummeting, despite high school graduation rates. That means an increasing number of students are basically being handed high school diplomas without actually becoming proficient in core fundamental subjects. But no tears then from Randi Weingarten, no demands that her teachers step up, no merit pay for teachers, no choice or vouchers for parents. Nope, just more money from the Department of Education for that institution. When you do the same thing over and over and over again, and you expect a different result, what do we call that? The definition of insanity. But Randi Weingarten, other union leaders, the Democratic Party, they never, ever seem to care about the results of your children. Finally, this unholy alliance, as I call it, between teachers' unions and the Democrats, the unions that donate a fortune to Democrats every 2 and 4 years, officially will be broken. And as you can see, they are only worried about the flow of money. They're not worried, they're not passionate, they're not screaming, they're not hemming and hawing about their massive failure to educate our children. The federal government writes big checks, the union organized support and donations for Democrats, and our students, your kids, they get left behind with no accountability at all whatsoever. And by the way, most of the money isn't even getting to teachers. Instead, administrative costs have exploded in the past several decades. But thanks to President Trump, this corrupt system, it is all about to change. States, local school districts, parents will have more freedom. And by cutting out the middleman at the Department of Education, they might even get more money. And their massive failure to educate your kids, that will come to an end. But let's be clear. Money alone does not improve education. If you look around the country, this is interesting. Some of the worst performing school districts also spend the most money per student. Example, case in point, New York allocates more than $36,000 per student, the highest in the country. New York's test scores in reading and math rank near the bottom. In contrast, according to one report, quote, over the past 20 years, Idaho, they have outperformed New York in 4th grade math, 8th grade reading, and Idaho averages just over 1/3 of what New York is spending per student year over year. And meanwhile, Washington, D.C., they spend the second most per student, but they rank 50th, that's dead last, in 8th grade math and 45th in reading. And let's not forget about the city of Baltimore, which spends well above the national average at more than $23,000 per student. But these are the results. 23 Baltimore school districts, 23. Not a single student, not one proficient in math, not one student in 23 schools. How can any honest Democrat look at that and support the status quo? Entire communities are being failed by the status quo. Randi Weingarten, other union bosses, they're getting paid well. Democrats get elected. They're fine with the system. But your students, our kids, never learn how to read, write, do math, learn history, science, computers. In other words, develop the skills that are needed for a career and a productive life. Education is the ladder to success in America. Teachers, unions, and Democrats have failed your children spectacularly. If you tried, you couldn't even fail. You know, in Reagan's term in 1980, they did a landmark study. It was called The Nation at Risk. And it literally determined what has happened to our educational system were it done by an outside entity or force would be tantamount to an act of war. And you know what? It's especially bad in majority blue states and blue cities. Democrats have never lifted a finger to help these kids, as long as they get their campaign donations every 2 and 4 years. In the 1980s, a principal at an inner-city high school in Paterson, New Jersey, his name Joe Lewis Clark, gained nationwide fame for bringing order and discipline and education to a school once wrought with nothing but chaos and violence and drugs. And Clark even inspired the 1989 movie. Morgan Freeman at his best. Lean on me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Yeah. Thank you. I get the same reaction in the sauna. Good evening, everyone. So President Trump is reportedly doing major renovations in the White House. His first project, turning the Rose Garden into a patio. But first, they'll have to get rid of the souvenirs the previous tenant left on the grass. That's an actual real photo, guys. Excellent graphic. President Trump signed an order today to dismantle the Department of Education. Yep. Soon, employees will be reading their pink slips at a third grade level. Meanwhile, one angry ex-employee claims it was the worst thing to happen since Nazis won the Civil War. Because, you know, they're stupid. The Trump White House paused $175 million in funding to UPenn over their trans athlete policy. True, the trans athletes are now taking their balls and going home. And soon the only wangs in the locker rooms will be transfer students from China. Yeah, clever, huh? Well, you can definitely tell spring is here. In Central Park this afternoon, I saw a rat catching a Frisbee. On my way into work this morning, I saw my Uber driver applying sunblock to his middle finger. And earlier today in Times Square, I saw a Venezuelan gang member carrying a softball mitt. Yeah. Hey, we're playing MS-13 tonight. Since being rescued on Tuesday, the previously stranded astronauts are having a tough time adjusting after 9 months in space. True, both were last seen orbiting J.B. Pritzker. Old habits. Hilaria Baldwin defended lashing out at her husband Alec during an awkward red carpet interview. She claimed he was man-terrupting, which sure beats man-slaughtering. I should end there.
Well played, sir.
Yes.
Well played.
And finally, U.S. border officials in Indiana have confiscated nearly $10,000 worth of fake Botox products. Yeah, you'll never guess who's seeking the death penalty. All right. So what's wrong with women?
Oh, you got an hour?
Well, according to a new poll, Ukrainian President Zelensky is adored among college-educated white women. They love him. And I get it. Who could deny his appeal, strutting around in clothes he swiped from a G.I. Joe? And when you're internationally famous, possessed of a smoldering sexuality, and slightly height-challenged, the women just throw themselves at your size 4 feet. I mean, you're talking to the original right here. But in Vladdy's case, not a bad guy, but isn't this love a little bit misplaced? Especially when, let's face it, if any other guy who looked like him smiled at these women, they'd get him fired from Uber. Are they really so in love with him? I mean, the same poll shows that they hate this guy, and I mean really hate. They hate him more when The Bachelor gets bumped for one of his speeches. But it puts them at odds with everyone else, mostly men. It reminds me how much they swoon over CEO shooter Luigi Mangione. Dozens of young women showed up in court to support a loner who killed a family man. His own family wasn't present. It's a reoccurring pattern, this misplaced empathy. So here we are, post-feminism, and congrats, smart white girls, you've won. I hereby award you your prize, the raging dumpster fire identifying as your life, which is burning like a Las Vegas Tesla dealership. And it's hate that makes it burn. White women despise Trump, Vance, and of course, the Republican Party. And what do they love? Well, you guessed it, DEI. And why not? Merit is a masculine evil, right up there with a Dutch oven. Now, it turns out white men without a college degree are the reverse. They love Trump, Vance, and Republicans, but they can't stand DEI and Zelensky, and they really hate the Democrat Party almost as much as they hate child support. But these numbers matter because whites still make up 71% of the American electorate. So it appears white women have educated the Dems right out of winning elections. It's weird. They used to be the ones with the common sense, the practical ones who kept men out of the ER when they had bright ideas involving ladders, skateboards, and chainsaws. I mean, you were the ones who stepped in when we said, "Watch this, honey, hold my beer." Well, until you decided the man you wanted holding a beer was this fella. But that practicality and undeniable capacity for love is being hijacked. It's not just for Mangione. This misplaced compassion rewards men on death row with regular marriage proposals. Hell, the Manson family were mostly female, who loyally followed another short guy into the darkness. It's why I won't grow facial hair. I don't need more fans. Look at college campuses with protests of mostly women screaming in support of men who aren't worth a second of their time. I mean, do you think Mahmoud Khalil is up on the best brunch spots for avocado toast? He probably doesn't even shave his back. Remember all those BLM social media posts during 2020's Summer of Love? Yeah, some love. You really see love do over $1 billion in damage. But it offered a low-effort virtue signal from afar without understanding the real things at stake, like the crime and destruction it caused, not to mention BLM scamming them blind. All of this is a hijacking of the maternal instinct, and women don't even know it's happening, even when they're in the back of a police car wearing flex cuffs. The maternal instinct is to care, just like the paternal instinct is to keep a family safe. But these visceral feelings can be exploited and twisted. Young females think such activism gives them agency and power, but it leaves them alone and broke, especially when it's time to pay for their useless college degrees. Then they demand plumbers and truckers to pick up the tab. It's no wonder liberal women are miserable, but conservatives aren't. According to new research, conservative women are less likely to see themselves as victims of larger structures and to less catastrophize about public events. They're also more likely to prioritize marriage, family, while embracing the differences between men and women. They swim in gratitude as lefties drown themselves in resentment, antidepressants, and meow mix. The only thing they have left, sadly, is an enabling Democrat Party, an abusive boyfriend that sustains their misery. Talk about marrying down. Let's welcome tonight's guest. He's here to make amends for appearing on Fox and Friends, Charlie Hertz. People at his shows usually bring something to read. Comedian Dave Landau. This lady talks so fast she once sprained a tonsil. Co-host of Outnumbered, Emily Campagno. And he can rip a phone company in half. New York Times best-selling author, comedian, and former NWA World Champion Tyrus. Charlie, always a pleasure to see you. How's the new gig going, huh? Getting up early on Saturday morning, trudging in, and...
Yeah, and I'm so thrilled. You watch every weekend.
Watch. I have someone watch for me.
Oh, that's how you tweet things out.
Yes, exactly.
When there's a mistake made.
Yes. We won't go into that here. Why are women more vulnerable to this sort of thing? I just noticed this more and more.
I don't know. I thought you were going to ask me what's wrong with white women.
Well, let's start there. What's wrong with white women?
Let me get a pen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like maybe we're going into some sort of dangerous territory here. I'm married to one. I'm the son of one.
Some of your best friends are white women.
Yeah, exactly. But what is kind of funny about it is if you want to know whether or not white women are crazy, you ask them, and they're the first to tell you that white women are crazy.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to voting patterns. And I do think it's interesting that at the end of all of it, the summation of everything that they believe is summed up in Vladimir Zelensky.
Yeah.
A guy who's broke, who's in a terrible fight. He's basically sort of like the political version of a guy with a neck tattoo. And they're in love with him.
Yes, he's a bad boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
women love those bad
hopeless bad boy.
A hopeless bad boy. I was just a bad boy. But then I cleaned up my act, and now I'm a good boy. But I'll act bad if you ask me to. After the show, ladies.
But I just want to reiterate, I love white women.
You hate black women?
I love all women.
Oh, you love all women, huh? Do you love...
And I'm in awe of them.
Oh, there you go, boy. What a pussy.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Dave, I do feel like when I was working on this monologue that maybe I'm being unfair, that most white women are fine. It's the ones that are activists that are terrible. But then you look at the voting records and it goes, well, they vote a certain way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they would vote for Zelensky unless they were Ukrainian, then they couldn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I mean, I'd like to say I love white bitches. I've had a lot of them.
Yeah.
But they're just different now, I guess, in college. I mean, when I was in college for a year at community college, it was like girls gone wild, you know? And now if they go wild, they're just firebombing a car dealership.
Yes.
It's completely different now.
Yeah, it's like it used to be the instant gratification at college was getting wasted and hooking up. And now it's like, I'm going to ruin my entire future by Instagramming me drawing a swastika.
Exactly right, on the side of a Tesla.
Exactly. Don't they the Teslas have cameras, you morons.
And the community college girls were great. I should say women. You know, they're wearing a Looney Tunes sweater, so you know they got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And they're really there because they were the ones that decided to keep their baby.
Yes.
So.
That is actually a nice thing to say. Emily, you're the only white woman here, or at least identify as one. You have no compassion at all. So you escaped the trap. Your compassion never gets hijacked.
I feel it boils down to susceptibility and safety, because I was really trying to figure out what the root of this is. And the distinction, obviously, is the college-educated and more. These are the over-educated white women that we're talking about. But I thought to myself, the other day I was in a really nice Upper East Side hair salon, and I overheard an obviously overly educated older white woman screaming about, her eyes were closed, so she didn't know we were all listening to her because she's getting her hair done, screaming about how the Luigi Mangione murderer, how on her side she was, how the death of that poor CEO father and husband, that who cares about just one more fat guy from the middle of the country, and went on. I was shocked. I almost said something to her, I didn't. But it was so frightening to me, that level of cruelty, and I realized she could only say that from the safety of her Upper East Side salon. So all of these activists we're talking about, that's the whole point. They do it with their cell phones. They do it from brunch. Remember, they wrote a ton of books.
They have those big things that go over women's heads.
Not for a while.
Not for a while.
Like a thought.
I would have just pulled it over her head and gone like this. Bang, 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 bang. But I haven't been to a hair salon. I haven't been to a hair salon since like 1981 with my mom. Those were the days.
The point is just that how susceptible that the sorority enclaves are in these academic campuses. That wasn't what the West Coast was like. You're right, we were doing keg stands on the median. But for some reason, for me, I'm biased because I'm from the West Coast, but it seems to be this East Coast, highly educated, these campuses where they're sitting around and their slumber parties are talking about how they can help other people, how we can be allies. Books were written about that during COVID, right? This is how you can, join in and be an ally, read the book, and then you'll be an activist. But it's all from the safety of their husbands' bank accounts, their daddy's bank accounts, the tuition paid for, and they can pat themselves on the back as an activist and vote in a certain way, but they don't know what the real world's like.
Tyrus, okay, we were talking about how women fall for the bad boys, but they also fall for crusades. It's like when one peters out, like climate change peters out, and now they're torching cars. So it's like, it doesn't really matter what the crusade is. They just go, oh, trees, ooh, cars.
Yeah, it just seems like every situation women fall.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to get away from a bad guy. Who falls? It's always the woman. That falls. You know, it's like they fall for everything. This is why we only live with one of them at a time. Because, you know, you can't trust them. They're all over the place. If they were cool, you'd have like 4 or 5 wives, but you can't because they're just mean. And you try to figure them out, you'll lose your hair, you'll give up your smile. Like, fellas, who cares why they do what they do? Just focus on the one you have to deal with. Ignore her as much as possible. Engage when you can. And the next time you see you have a gay guy friend, walk up to him and be like, I don't ever want to hear you complain about anything in your life. Look what I have to deal with. They take on stuff that has nothing to do with them, but cannot figure out why they're cranky in the morning. Like they want to solve all of Ukraine's problems. They want to adopt every puppy, but like they literally cannot figure out a day-to-day place to, I don't know, like, hey, where do you want to eat? Whoa. You'll be there for 12 hours. I don't know. Where do you want to eat? Well, let's eat there. I don't like that place. Want to eat there? I don't like that place. This is what we have to deal with. I'm telling you, I've been with every shade of the rainbow. I'm currently with the white one now until it gets rid of me. But you know what? Every time they get rid of me, it hurts a little less. You know what I'm saying? It's like eventually you get to the point where you're like, wow, you know what the prettiest thing in the world is? Silence.
And on that note, we shall move on.
Oh, but they're all great, right, Charlie?
Up next, goodbye, Department of Ed.
If you'll be in the New York area and would like tickets to see Gutfeld, go to foxnews.com/Gutfeld and click on the link to join our studio audience.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.